As the climate debate seems to intensify, still many people are hesitant to take significant steps to address it. Many scientists are warning of dire consequences. They describe a future where certain parts of the world could become unbearably hot, resulting in heat-related death. Diseases may become more dangerous, and there could be chronic food shortages as agriculture struggles to adapt to changing conditions. Entire regions, such as Bangladesh, parts of the Netherlands, some of the Polynesian islands, and many more, will be entirely or at least partially submerged underwater. Additionally, the shortages of clean water could affect both human populations and agricultural productivity. The health of the oceans may deteriorate and air pollution levels rise significantly. However, even before reaching all these catastrophic scenarios, there will be widespread social, economic, and political turmoil as people are forced to flee regions no longer suitable for habitation due to climate change. In all, not a pleasant foresight if this will be true. However, on a global scale, it is interesting to see that the public support for environmental initiatives is becoming less and less. In America, environmental attitudes and policy preferences have become increasingly polarized. Republicans are less likely to be concerned about the environment or to support environmental policies than Democrats. And in Europe, the political parties that achieved massive success in the 2019 European Union elections, largely due to the momentum generated by widespread climate protests led by Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, are encountering significant resistance. This opposition is primarily fueled by discontent among farmers who feel left out by the Green Deal policies and the general public who see their costs of living rise exponentially. People feel that there really isn't an authentic voice for farming issues anymore. These feelings are also very present with the Canadian farmers, who are also experiencing a steady fall in profits and rise in cost. They find that the politicians have a lack of understanding, and that there is no real representation anymore for the farmers. Worldwide, this discontent among agricultural communities has provided fertile ground for the enhancement of nationalist sentiments, further exacerbating tension. Far-right political factions are capitalizing on this discontent, experiencing a notable surge in popularity. Green parties and their hopes for a greener future, where the environment is better protected, are facing considerable hurdles. Recent polling data indicates that they are experiencing substantial setbacks in electoral contests across numerous countries. In the European Union, leaders are even changing their promises to protect the environment in the hope that they can remain in power. Those who advocate for urgent actions to preserve the climate and nature are feeling pushed to the side, trying hard to get more leverage support for their cause. National debates are happening worldwide, with discussions reaching the highest levels of government. Politicians on the hard-right and center-right sides of the political spectrum are trying to create momentum for their voters. They fuel and thrive on feelings of dissatisfaction among certain groups. Their arguments range from claiming that efforts to combat climate change are excessive and costly to even suggesting that climate change itself is not real. In richer parts of Northern Europe, where climate policies are impacting personal choices more deeply, some people feel that their individual freedoms are being challenged. In sunnier southern regions, governments are struggling to address public anger over their perceived inability to handle the droughts and fires intensified by climate change. However, this doesn't always translate into calls for more drastic reductions in emissions. And in the East, where the cost of living is high, concerns about daily expenses often overshadow environmental considerations. In all, public opinion on the climate crisis is definitely shifting. It's now considered one of the toughest and most challenging political issues Western societies have ever faced. And in particular, Western societies, because climate change might affect less developed countries, the debate is not on top of their priority lists. However, this doesn't mean there hasn't been any progress on environmental initiatives. In the United States, greenhouse gas emissions have remained stable since the 1990s, despite economic and population growth. Globally, though, greenhouse gas emissions have increased, bringing humanity close to the predicted levels of global warming. Despite these trends, the public remains divided and significant parts of the political class seem indifferent. In the United States, between a third and almost half of the population believes that the severity of global warming is heavily exaggerated. Republican opposition to climate action is one factor contributing to this lukewarm response from the public. You might wonder, why is it so hard for us to understand the potential seriousness of the climate crisis, given how much harm it could cause to people and the planet? It's surprising that more people aren't taking it seriously. But when we think about it, it is actually quite logical. There are reasons why this is the case. Let's explore these reasons for a moment. There are mainly two explanations. The problem is really complicated, and we need everyone to work together and trust each other to solve it. Let's examine the matter of complexity first. Complexity makes it difficult to solve many modern public problems, and the issue of climate change is no exception. Climate change is complex by nature. It's caused by various factors such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide emissions. As the climate changes, it affects many things like glaciers, sea levels, water supply, rainfall, and wind patterns, and much more. And unlike earlier environmental problems, it's not easy to see how actions in one place, like running coal plants, can lead to disasters like hurricanes in another. In contrast, if you see a beach full of plastic and dead fish floating on the surface, it's obvious that something is causing it. You can pinpoint it directly to the local producers of plastic bottles and the like. The earlier environmental movement had an easier time understanding the direct links between causes and effects. The second reason why grasping the true threat of the climate crisis is challenging lies in collective action and trust. Here's an example to understand it a bit better. During hotter summers, more people want to use their air conditioning to stay cool. But using air conditioning actually makes the heat outside even worse. Scientists say that the extra heat released by air conditioners can make cities even hotter. This is what is called the heat island effect. Locally, the air becomes hotter than the surrounding countryside. The temperature can rise as much as 1 degree Celsius. However, when you know everybody is using their air conditioning, it is tough to decide to turn yours off, especially when we know that many others won't do the same. Another crucial aspect to consider is the lack of trust in the government, which can act as a significant barrier to effective environmental action. While many people may understand the importance of taking action for the greater good, they might feel reluctant to make personal changes. Why would you limit your air travel, especially if they believe others won't do the same and the plane is flying anyhow, with or without you? This reliance on others to take action can create a dilemma known as a collective action problem. Tackling climate change requires cooperation on multiple levels, both within nations and across borders. However, achieving this cooperation has become particularly challenging because trust in government has been on the decline for many years now, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. This lack of trust can diminish the public's perception and dampen their willingness to support behaviors or policies aimed at addressing it. These research findings are quite understandable, particularly in the American context. If you already have doubt about the government in general, you're likely to be skeptical when they tell you to take action on climate change. You'd probably be even more doubtful if an international organization like the United Nations says climate change is a big problem. Plus, if the government starts imposing lots of rules and regulations like they do in Europe, which directly impact people's living conditions and standards, it is only natural for people to start to protest. It doesn't work that way. The last part of understanding why the importance of climate change in politics doesn't seem as urgent as scientists say it is has to do with our imagination. Being able to tell a compelling story is crucial in order to get people's attention. We tend to grasp concepts better through stories. However, when it comes to climate change, there seems to be a lack of a captivating narrative. Instead, politicians and scientists rely heavily on surveys and lengthy reports filled with complex analyses to persuade the public. If we don't change our lives, we will suffer the consequences. But people don't want to be changed. It has to come from within. If we truly want to engage people and evoke action, we need to ensure that the topic of climate change is omnipresent, not just in scientific reports, but also in literature, films, and television programs. We mustn't underestimate the profound impact that stories have on shaping society's perceptions and attitudes. Make it their story instead of a bunch of unpopular imposed rules by the government. And lastly, the European Union has positioned itself as a leader in addressing climate change. It has set targets to reduce carbon emissions and proposed policies to cut emissions even further in the coming decade. Despite these efforts, the backlash against environmental measures has been somewhat contained, but there's growing resistance as citizens struggle with the rising cost of living. Moreover, The decisions made by the European Union are authoritarian. There was no public involvement, and this has widened the gap between citizens, businesses, and the government. Many feel neglected and burdened by the financial strain of the heavy regulations. So give people real alternatives. Develop a robust green industry with high future prospects, such as creating green jobs and fostering new economic opportunities centered around sustainability. Importantly, these initiatives need to be accompanied by a compelling narrative to ensure their success. Without a persuasive story, the Green Deal will always have a hard deal to survive. Thanks for watching. Until next time.